Jesse Mitchell says that every single nuclear base in the United States has been visited by UFOs. We've got that and a lot more to talk about today, so get in here. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please like and subscribe and let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Yeah, this is just a very short clip of Jesse Mitchell's, and he's talking about Robert Hastings' research, and he says that he believes Robert Hastings, and Hastings is telling him that every single nuclear base in the U.S. has been visited by ETs. So what's up with that? What is the attraction of nuclear energy to the beings? Are they feeding off of the energy? Are they worried about our use of this technology, you know, bleeding over into dimensions or disrupting the Earth or just the contamination on the Earth? You know, why are they so fascinated by our nuclear weapons and energy? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But I just thought I'd share that with you, that according to Robert Hastings, via Jesse Mitchell's, every single nuclear base in the U.S., and, you know, if it's the U.S., it's probably around the world, right, has been visited by UFOs. Every single one. That's crazy. Meanwhile, Jason Sands is back on Twitter Spaces, or X Spaces, whatever we're supposed to call it now. And he had some really interesting stuff to say. And David Haith was good enough to provide a transcript, or a partial transcript, of that amazing interview. So let's go over some of that information. He talks about David Grush's reaction and others' reactions to his coming out on Twitter Spaces, to Jason Sands, UFO whistleblower Jason Sands, coming out on Twitter Spaces. He says, whistleblower Jason Sands admitted on a Spaces chat today that his coming out that way previously upset David Grush and the disclosure team. He said, David and the rest of the guys were, I guess, upset with me because I didn't realize that they had all these plans, okay? And I think I shattered some of that in their mind. And that for some reason now is either going rogue or I hadn't thought things through. Maybe they're right. Maybe I didn't think it fully through and I did do some kind of damage to their plan. But I don't think it did. Maybe actually coming around to help them because they seem to be coming out in spaces themselves now. I don't see a problem including the American public. I don't know, Jason. I mean, you're saying some pretty wild stuff. And, you know, David is probably going further than any disclosure plan, previously, put in place would have gone. You know, talking about the other dimensional aspect of the phenomenon and biologics and getting kind of jiggy with it. But then Jason Sands comes along and gets super jiggy. And, I can totally understand why David would be upset with that and how that could potentially harm a disclosure effort if people were taking Jason Sands seriously. And it sounds like David Grush is taking him seriously. He wouldn't be upset with Jason Sands if he didn't think Jason was on the level. I think that's really intriguing and possibly critical in the Jason Sands saga. Other news, he talks about Ross Coulthart. And I thought this was really interesting. He says, I think I've got a lot of journalists that are putting together their pieces, and maybe each of them can do their own rendition thereafter. I know I listened to Coulthart lately on some of his stuff, and I'm just like, holy crap, dude, you've talked to some people, man. He literally heard from the people that I was working with, and I'm like, good grief, you've got to be kidding me. They actually did that in Australia, and he's like talking to these people. And that's the kind of stuff that is earth-shattering. So yeah, validating Ross Coulthart's contacts and sources, saying they have some of the same contacts and sources. I find that really intriguing, and further validation of both Ross Coulthart and Jason Sands. Very intriguing. He also talks about the tall whites. He talked about encountering that one being that he's now thinking is a tall white being. He says, I did listen to the full Monty on Charles Hall. I know a friend that knows him personally, and I believe everything he says. Charles Hall is, one of our primary sources of information about the tall whites. who Charles Hall was encountering at Area 51. They had like a community there, and they were, interacting somewhat with the humans at Area 51. And they weren't super friendly, but they weren't like, attacking or anything. They were evidently working together somehow. So he talks about them being hostile, so keep that in mind. He says, it's very similar to the description of the being that I met some years later. Seems to be, according to Charles's description, that the being I met was a younger version of a tall white. I've only that encounter to go with, and that person was not hostile. Listening to Charles Hall's story, yeah, the ones on the range where he was working seemed hostile. And the same thing I could say that when I was on mission, I heard that whenever the tall whites were mentioned in the lab environment, they didn't want humans around. So I think the program people were thought of in a bad way by the tall whites. It seems the hostility is almost everything I've heard that I felt was believable, is that it was the program people that had done something, or a group within the program brought grievances, and maybe we're making them guarded because of our own kind of brutality towards them, and that may be a factor in there, that may be part of the mix. So yeah, the tall whites, per Charles's Hall story, didn't seem to like the humans very much. They were very, they considered us kind of dangerous and, unpredictable. And, if, there were young, tall whites around, they were very protective of their children, to the point of hostility. So I think that's, when we say hostile in terms of the tall whites, we're talking about that. We're not talking about them like openly, maliciously attacking people for no reason. He goes on to say that he respects Gary Nolan and Danny Sheehan and Ross Coulthard and Corbell and Knapp and everybody else that's helped him along the way, but they seem to have differences of opinion about how to go about disclosure. He says they all have their own reputations and they have their own way of handling their reputations. Me, honestly, I don't give an S. I'm just a person who's trying to get a better spot, and I'm just sick and tired of having to play rules. I guess maybe play by the rules. That the entire effort for disclosure has to be done a certain way. I think that's being a little too sensitive. So there you go. That's what Jason Sands had to say. He thinks that sticking by the rules is wrong and it's okay to go rogue and just get this information out there. So what do you think? Is he right and we should just rip the Band-Aid off and get this information out there? Or in order to make it more easily digestible to, the mass audience, do you have to drip feed this a little bit more and get more of an official sort of disclosure? Going through the DOPSR process, getting things approved, getting things out there, getting witnesses and evidence lined up to present to people, and then, taking the audience, us, step by step through this whole thing. Or do you think just getting out there and ripping the Band-Aid off is the way to go? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below about that and everything else Jason Sands is saying here. Meanwhile, Naeem from the Future Forecasting Group that I follow, and they do such a great job of remote viewing. They've got a team, they remote view stuff, and it's awesome because you get to see the corroboration among the viewers. And I think that's just a brilliant way of doing remote viewing, and they're also good at it. Well, Naeem here himself is viewing an incident of alien abduction, and he is getting some insight into the being's motivation behind alien abduction, or at least that's the information that he's getting. So let's give a listen to what Naeem is seeing here.
The probe here is like abduction, surgery, implants, biomodifications, and it's like horrific abominations, ill intent, gene modification, and this won't end well. Continuation of a species. They got to do what they got to do. No regrets. But the sense is like, help us. Like they need our help. Again, this idea of like a manifest destiny to inhabit a corporeal being. They have like a corrupt strain, something with the hemoglobin, smells of like putrefaction, almost like they're expiring. The probe here is like
yeah, so you get that a lot in experiencer accounts when they're interacting with the beings. often they will tell people that, yeah, we're here to continue our species. We need to do this hybridization because that's the way to go. That's the only way our species can continue. Now, the problem with that is they've told people that in several different narratives, several different, highly different narratives, that they're us from the future, they're from the past, they're from an alternate reality, they're from an alternate reality in the future, but they're related to us genetically. They've told people a whole wide range of scenarios, but the general thrust of it is always that they are a weak, dying race and that they need us for our genetics to continue their own race. Is that real information? Well, again, they've told people that in so many different ways. Obviously, the details of the story are not true. Is the general thrust of it true? I mean, if it is, why are they lying about it? So I tend to think that the beings are being deceptive here because the general idea is that they're weak and they're dying. We have nothing to fear from them and that they need us. So in other words, the whole narrative is designed to put us at ease. We have nothing to fear from them. They're not going to hurt us because they need us. So could they be, even in a remote viewing session, trying to get this narrative across to Naeem? That's the question I put to you guys. Let me know if you think this is real information or not. But of course, I'm certainly not the only person to talk about beings being deceptive. Dr. Carla Turner in 1995 was saying at least some of the aliens are liars. And that is certainly what I'm seeing in my research is that they are not always telling people the truth about things. That doesn't mean they're doing it in a malicious way. If hybridization or the abductions are an important project for them and they are simply trying to put people at ease because, obviously that'd be better for the person experiencing this, so, that it doesn't mean that it's malicious. So let me know your thoughts on that. Are they being deceptive? Are they being honest? What is the overall purpose for abductions in the hybridization program? Obviously, I interviewed Mary Rodwell recently, researcher and experiencer Mary Rodwell, and she had some amazing things to say about her research into abductions because, of course, she has hypnotically regressed so many people, and she had a much more uplifting, positive view on it all. So I think there's different ways to view this and different ways to interpret it. It'd be so nice if we could ask the beings directly and if they would give us a response that we could all agree was genuine. But hey, that's just me. Let me know your thoughts. Here's John Mack talking about what the Dalai Lama had to say about alien abductions.
He stopped in a meeting and someone was trying to ask him to explain something. He says, those creatures, he says, they're spirits. He says, but they're very upset. He says, they're upset. He says, we are destroying their physical and spiritual home. He said, they have no choice. He says, they have to come into our physical world to get our attention. He says, that's the only way that they can communicate that they have lost this, that we are destroying their home. So they manifest physically.
There you go. The beings are manifesting physically to get our attention because we are destroying their home. Does that have something to do with nuclear power? If so, if we are destroying their home or harming them in some way, why not just come right out and tell us directly? Why play these games? Meanwhile, check this out. Isn't this sculpture amazing? It looks like some sort of ancient ruin, right? Some fabulous lost piece of ancient Atlantis or something. But it's actually a modern sculpture. I think it was built in the 1950s. But I bring this to your attention because this sculpture is in the country of Georgia. Not the state of Georgia, but the country of Georgia. Former Soviet state, Georgia. And I am going to Georgia very soon. In September, I am going to Georgia. And I'll give you more details about why I'm going to Georgia later. But I did want to remind you guys that I am going out of the country for a few weeks in September to this place where this monument is. Hopefully I can see this, or the sculpture. Hopefully I can get to see the sculpture because that looks badass. Also, I hope when I'm there to do some research into the elongated skull people who their genetics seem to indicate came from that general part of the world. So who knows, maybe I'll get to find out the secret to the elongated skull people while I'm there. Meanwhile, a different remote viewing group that Dick Allgaier and Daz Smith were once associated with, the Farsight viewing group, well, they have been viewing the Nazca lines. And I thought this was a really intriguing episode of Farsight, because they were getting some insight in what might be the answer to the mystery of the Nazca lines. They were seeing different groups of people. One was coming from a structure in the sky, you know, a UFO, something like that. And there was a different group of people on the land, and they were tribal, and they were a permanent part of the region. But the sky people had a connection to the land. And when they came to this part of that part of the world, there was a deep sense of nostalgia for them. So are those like future humans, you know, coming to check on where they came from? Are they, you know, crypto-terrestrials that left the planet and had nostalgia for where they came from? You know, Atlanteans, you know, some relics of former civilization on Earth that's lost now. You know, what do you think is going on there? And it seems like they may have had some part to play in the creation of the Nazca lines. One of the viewers, because there's several remote viewers tasked with this, one of the viewers was seeing a human creating the Nazca lines, but he was frenzied and hectic as he was digging the Nazca lines. It almost felt like he was, well, not possessed, but like he was like a puppet, like somebody else was controlling him in the creation of these Nazca lines. So were the beings directing people mentally in the creation of the Nazca lines because of this connection they felt for that part of the world, this nostalgia they were feeling? And did these lines help them experience that emotion, or, you know, as a monument to their times past on the planet? You know, we don't have any final answers in this remote viewing, but super fascinating to consider. So let me know your thoughts. Meanwhile, Elon Musk says this is what they are aiming to try in late July. This is SpaceX's newest venture. This is what they're going to do. So let's give a watch to the CGI version of what they're going to do. So this thing comes down. I guess it was coming from space, this rocket thing that's probably already put something else into space. And then they are going to, using these robotic arms, they're going to take that other rocket and they are going to put it on top of the launcher. And then they are going to launch the whole thing into space again. So you have this reusable base, I guess, is the idea. And yeah, so really cool. I mean, it's definitely an advancement. I'd rather have a UFO. I mean, we know we've got them, guys. We got them. So why not just use the UFOs, right? I mean, another reason for UFO disclosure so that we can have access to this technology. But meanwhile, we're blundering along with rockets and, you know, making some great strides. I mean, SpaceX is really upping the game as far as going into space goes. So kudos, Elon and team. Meanwhile, if you haven't checked this song out yet, you might want to give it a shot. It's from the Hex Pistols. It's a cover-up, dadgammit. Excuse me, dadgummit. Yeah, so from Dragonfire, only has 60 subscribers now, but I bet they'll get a lot more, but I can't play it. I'm afraid of copyright claims, even though it's probably okay on this song. But I'll link to it below, and you can watch the UFO cover-up song or the anti-UFO cover-up song. It's pretty good. Last but not least, check out the most interesting tree cutting you're likely to see today. Wait for it, guys. But let me know what you think about everything I've covered today in the comments below. And if you've liked this video, please give me a big thumbs up. I sure appreciate it. Here we go. Here we go. Wait for it. Wait for it. It's coming. They're just trying to save a dog, guys. They're just trying to save a dog. Somehow I got trapped in that tree. What are you doing, dog? And you need a bath. You need a bath. Don't be messing around in trees. Okay, but he's safe now. The tree was lost, but the dog was safe. So let me know what you think about this dog saving technique and everything else covered today in the comments below. Like and subscribe, become a channel member to support the channel. Buy some merch in the merch store. There's plenty of other videos on the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. This is Jack with Cosmic Road, signing out.